Now, the untold story here is what happened behind the scenes. And we see here that the hero, the gatekeeper, was Captain Jonathan Tennant, who is a harbor pilot. Now, most of us may not even know what a harbor pilot is. We might see the if we're ever on a cruise ship, a little boat come out and some guy hop on or hop off, depending whether you're entering or leaving the harbor. Well, that person is the harbor pilot. And the harbor pilot is basically responsible for the safety of the crew and the ship while it's in the harbor. And in some countries, while they're in the harbor and the harbor pilot is on board, that harbor pilot's decisions actually take precedence over that of the captain. So, Jonathan Tennant was on the boat as it was heading out, and as he was going out during low tide, he felt the bow hit, and he immediately turned the boat to the left because he knew that if he didn't turn the boat to the left, that he would have problems. So I have here a picture that I took actually going under the bridge. You can see here's a big cargo ship, and right behind that cargo ship is the harbor pilot boat. Now this little boat will actually follow the big ship all the way out until the ship is out of the harbor. And at that point, the captain will need to crawl down the side, often on not much more than a ladder, and sort of time with the waves going up and down the transfer from the boat to the actual ship. So we see here the little boat heading out, and as it's moving out, it's going out to the harbor. And the second shot, you can see that in this case, the harbor pilot and the boat were in no problems. But in the case that we're talking about, once the captain realized, the harbor pilot realizes that Jonathan Tennant, that there was a problem here, he immediately turned the wheel hard to port, or the left. And in that port, when he did that because he knew that if the boat, after it hit, got caught in the tide, that it would actually, the outgoing tide would actually push the boat, the incoming tide would actually have blocked the boat and the channel would have been closed. Now there was an added element here that was also very interesting, because remember you heard from the video clip earlier that there was another boat coming down, and Captain Tennant realized that there was a particular situation, because right after he made that left-hand turn, the boat went on its side. Now he was up at the pilot house, he was on the bridge, and when the bridge moved 90 degrees, he couldn't, obviously, he was actually sitting or holding on to the wheel, the pilot that was just there before, and so he and the captain were there. And another interesting thing happened during this time. Because the ship was turned sideways and because water was rushing in, all the electronics above the boat, on the boat, were dead, except for a little handheld marine radio that Captain Tennant kept with him on his emergency pack. And from that radio message, he called out and he told the incoming pilot that he had to change and move his direction so the two ships wouldn't collide with one another. And the incoming pilot, realizing the precarious situation of keeping that ship off of the Golden Ray, keeping it off of the sand barge and not blocking the channel, directed the tug that was coming out to get him to instead go to the Golden Ray and push the tug and keep it up on the sandbar while the tide was going out. That was successful, so not only did he avoid a collision, but he also avoided the ship being blocked. But now we were in a situation where there was no communication from the ship. The captain and the gatekeeper here, the harbor pilot, are on their side, and at this point Captain Tennant was able to use his shortwave, his marine radio, to contact through a relay here in Brunswick Harbor the Charleston Coast Guard. The Charleston Coast Guard came down with ships and helicopters and rescue crews, and all the coordination from the ship was done by Captain Tennant on this little marine radio. Well, by the time all this was done, remember this had happened during the day. At this point, it's now morning. Everybody had been gotten off board except for 4 crew that were trapped in the engine room, and they were then able, the captain, both captains, Captain Tennant and the captain of the Golden Ray, at that point left the ship, and there were no casualties at all. So we have all sorts of gatekeepers. I like this particular picture. It talks about the chicken keeper, and you can sort of see the strength. There's maybe a little bit of humor here, but he's defended that snake, and he's keeping his chickens alive. So the question we would ask, though, is who are the gatekeepers in our life? Who do we establish that trust and courage and obedience with? And certainly during this time, we can think of people that we would not normally think of as gatekeepers. For example, all the grocery store clerks who are getting minimum wage or not much more, and yet there they are, making sure that we have food on our tables. And we can think of the policemen who are also involved in how they're out and they're helping us. And there's also a question of asking, is God not also our gatekeeper? And can we find and respond and hear his voice? And have we been listening and feeling his confidence during his time? How do we get so familiar with Jesus that we can hear his voice and respond to his leadership? Earlier today, we're going to serve communion, and during that communion, I want you to think about that joy and comfort and sense of peace of being kept in his sheep gate. Amen.